It's not cheaper to keep her. I'm a bad mamacita. Magnetic radiation going off in your speaker like what? Too many kids, so I'm not gonna cuss. My poetics originate from dark matter. I leave every open mic covered in blood spatter. Man, hold up, time out. Let me turn up the sound of bacon kicks. I got the sweetness, so call me sugar mama. My lyrics are jelly, so that's why they jam. I'm your host is doing the most is making poetry slam. Back up, back up. Give me 50 feet. I'm on the mic to make the cipher complete. Your favorite poetess, spitting a verse, even if a rhyme slow, put the gear in reverse. Your girl over here sparking up mad isms. That's right, you heard me. A cataclysm, an explosion, if you will. So let go and act ill with mahogany. Yes, just like the tree. Magnetic, as in magnetically. With that bog wild style kung fu. MC for dropping mad clues. So the ball is in your court. What you gonna do next? I done showed you my good side and I'm still vexed. There's nothing wrong. You can't fix me. I'm a lady but still rip off my clothes like Bill Bixby. Did turn all sexy green on your ass. Then it's like She-Hulk smash. And your entire paradigm has been terror transformed. Game over. Magnetic wins. Insert coin. Yay. Alright, that's my little introduction piece because I'm your host of Doing the Most. It's MC MoHagani Magnetek here with the Perseverance Regional Theater out of Alaska. And we're doing this, we're bringing something like fresh, something new, but historical and also true. Yeah, today we're talking about Juneteenth. And the title of this presentation is They Got Juneteenth in Alaska? Yes, it's Juneteenth in Alaska. And we're going to get right into this stuff because this is good stuff. And I just want to let you know um, you're going to have a good time. So let's do the darn thing, right? And we're like just excited that Juneteenth is here, and so we doing our part. Your girl MC MoHagani Magnetek here, along with the Perseverance Theater out of Juneau, and what I'm saying, we up here in Alaska doing a darn thing. And one of the things I don't know, I'm coming up on being a lifetime Alaskan or whatever you consider the history and the amount of years I've been here in and out of this state, this wonderful, beautiful state. Nevertheless, I was originally got here like in the 90s and stuff, and I've traveled, gone places and stuff like this. And when I get around other black folks and we're talking about history and culture and everything, and I bring up like, yeah, that's Juneteenth, and people are like, what? They got Juneteenth in Alaska? It's like, yeah, they do. So I want to take the time, put on my historical archaeologist hat for you and get into some history and culture here to like let you all know that what Juneteenth is and how it's been going down here in Anchorage, Alaska. Like almost like 3 decades or so now. So here's my little biographical sketch to give you an idea about who I am and what validates me as someone who can talk about history and culture. Because I got a few degrees, in anthropology, English, crime scene, death investigation, and I picked up my MFA in 2020 in creative writing and literary arts. That's what's up. Very proud moment for MC MoHagani Magnetek. But yeah, so those are some of the things. And I've been an archaeologist since 1996, 97. I did my first dig out the Levi Jordan plantation in Texas. And since then, I've done excavations primarily on African American burial grounds and plantation studies. I've done excavations like Texas, Georgia, South Carolina, New York, and even though it wasn't African American archaeology, I did do some archaeology since I've been here in Alaska. And with all of that comes like this not just a passion, but driving this wealth of knowledge over the years about African American culture here in the Americas. And so I want to get into this right now. I don't want to waste no more time with y'all because this is some good stuff, and I hope you have some good takeaways. So let's get into the questions, right? And we got Malcolm X here, Malcolm X on Afro-American history. It's a good book, so you should check it out sometimes. Little one, good stuff. But the questions are, what is Juneteenth? And what is exactly African American slavery? You would think like everyone knows these things, but no, not everyone doesn't know everything, and that's why there's like such thing as like learning and culture and education and people like me who are culture bearers and want to bring it to you. So then our topic of the day is they got Juneteenth in Alaska. And another question, I often get asked this, yo, MoHagani, is Wakanda a real place? So we're going to answer that. And then at the end of this presentation, there will be a test. So break out your notepads, break out your pens, take notes, and be ready for this test at the end of this all. So what is Juneteenth, right? So what is Juneteenth? Juneteenth is an annual celebration. It's a blend it's an amalgamation of two words, right? June and 19th. And that's to say that in June 19th, 1865, Gordon Granger, and the Union soldiers came in and like let African Americans in Texas, Galveston, know that slavery was over. Mind you, this is 1865, not 1863, when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, which, ultimately brought an end to the Civil War. We're going to get into that later. So Juneteenth, National Independence Day, June 17, 2021, it became federal law, right? So let me just rewind there. So the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act was signed June 17, 2021, thus making Juneteenth a national federal holiday, which means for the folks, out there who love the day off of work, you get a day off work just like all the other federal holidays. Good stuff, right? So, we're just like delighted about this whole business. So, briefly, we want to talk about Africans in America. What is the history of Africans in America? And to know that it's important to know, several things, right? That to African and Americans wasn't necessarily slaves, right? We were enslaved people. And that's the major difference between being enslaved, meaning it's just your body that's being enslaved, but your spirit is untampered with. It's not touched, versus like being a slave and you just go with the rhythm and then you're like, shucking and jiving and all that kind of stuff, doing minstrel shows, and you think everyone thinks you're cool, you're hot shit, but you're really not, because your soul is gone, So, but it's important to know that I'm often looking for ways to show African Americans that we preserve more culture. We've had this cultural accumulation, a continuation that's been permanent. That's been persistent throughout our history and struggle here in America. And it wasn't that slavery took everything. Slavery took our language. It took our culture and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, slavery took our land. It took our bodies. It took a lot of things away and like dealt some very, very heavy blows to our ancestors that are still affecting us now. But nevertheless, you just cannot deny Africanity, our Africanisms. You cannot deny who we are internally as a people, and no matter what, ever since like 1344, when the Portuguese first come to Africa and start taking Africans as slaves, as people, we've been resisting that. And that's shown. So one of the other couple of things that I have in this slide is like let you know that prior to the enslavement process, the transatlantic slave trade, that was pre-colonial Africa. Africa was on this verge of a multicultural industrial revolution, and that's primarily because everyone's there in Central Africa, people moving from the south. You had the last like descendants from Kemet or Egypt, Nubia, Kush, those nations coming in from the north and people pushing from the west and the east. So you have this like this mesh of people here in the center of the continent by the time this transatlantic slave trade kicks off, because you get into this question all the time when talking about Black history, and that is like, oh, Africans sold each other into slavery. Oh, look at this, we got a message. Yeah, so anyways, we got commercials in this, and it's important you pay attention to these commercials and see what's going on with the Mindsaw Lady as we progress through this presentation. But let's get back to this, right? So, when Africans were captured and brought to the Americas, right, one of the things that you often hear is like, oh, Black people sold each other into slavery. And there's some truth to that. We just cannot deny the truth of that. That, like, so many nations, so many people were involved and participated in transatlantic slave trade. However, for many, for Africans and many other cultures, the slavery existed for thousands of years. But there was never this such thing as being a perpetual slave, perpetual servitude, meaning not only you were enslaved, but your children and your descendants and your perpetually enslaved as well too. That wasn't there. You had opportunity to go on and become, the boss wherever you live, whereas, in America that just wasn't afforded to us. So, we get this thing in America, and they often call it the peculiar institution of slavery. And so for Africans in America, now I should rewind just a little tidbit, but in 1523, Estevanco, the conquistador who came here with the Spanish, was an enslaved person at the time. Though, an explorer on this expedition, but it's like, it's the first that we know of so far of an African being in America and enslaved. Mind you, there was Africans that was visiting, the Americas long before, the 1700s, the 1500s, long before that. That's another story, Check out Ivan Van Sertima, that came before Columbus, for more information on that. But let's get down to 1619, because that's a date that we cannot forget. That is the day the first 21 Africans arrived in Virginia, Jamestown, Virginia, as indentured servants. Mind you, initially they were not slave. As an indentured servant, you just had to work off your 7 years, and then you was free to do whatever the hell you want to do. And and that worked for the first 50, 70 years in colonial history, and then this whole hot mess that we found ourselves into, or whatever, began to be a thing sometime after that in the late 1600s and definitely 1700s. The transportation, the sale of human cargo was full swing. So really sad stuff. But I wanted to share this picture, this image with you, because I had opportunity to go to Jamestown, Virginia, somewhere around 2008 or so, and I was down there, and I got on a bike, and I rode 20 miles from where I was at to Jamestown, Virginia, and I rode 20 miles. So it was a nice 40-mile ride. But on that journey, I got to go to this historic site, and just to sit there on the shoreline and know this was the first place, well, not from this perspective, it would be a cooler picture if it was from the water, that these first 21 Africans came to America, and it was a humbling experience for me to this is where it started for many, 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 many of our ancestors. So yeah, this peculiar institution of slavery, right? And we talked a little bit about this, Africans selling each other, everyone participating in this hot mess of the transatlantic slave trade. I also think it's important to note that Africans were sold in exchange for sugar, rum, tobacco, molasses, right? And these are all addictive substances. So when you think about not just the transatlantic slave trade, but you think about what the drug trade is, and why we got, crack in our communities, and now we got meth and all this other stuff, and even some of these kids are doing Tide Pods, whatever. This system, this worldwide system, this worldwide trade of bartering, people for these addictive substances. It starts right here with the transatlantic slave trade in the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries. And then it doesn't end until like I think 1700s, somewhere around there is when the U.S. decides to end slavery. But that was just the transportation of people from across the waters. Slavery was still legal in America. It was still legal for people to own other folks and do all this stuff. But nevertheless, it was still legal, and it wasn't until, of course, that it all ended in with the accumulation of the Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation. But yeah, this is some stuff that you need to know. And they call it the peculiar institution because just the atrocities, the many atrocities, families ripped apart, people forced to work, in some situations can't see in the evening, they can't see in the morning, they can't see at night, and that was the people who was like harvesting tobacco and lumber, those heavy things. But there were also Africans who were imported from Africa to do the rice and the indigo. One of the things that you often hear is like, oh, they just brought anybody here. No, they brought some of the smartest people here. They learned early on not to go get some of the warriors. They rebelled, and this is how you get maroon culture and society in the Caribbean and the islands there. But nevertheless, so it's like they stopped doing that, but they really focus on importing Africans who could not only had the physical ability but had the knowledge and the wisdom to cultivate these crops in which the various plantations that they lived on. So, briefly, the Middle Passage. I always think each time I have an opportunity to talk about the enslavement process, to talk about the Middle Passage and this journey. It was like a 90-day journey from the west coast of Africa to get to the Americas, in which people are like packed in the bottom of these slave ships, like good ship Jesus, and this one particularly here, the Greyhound, and many Africans jumped overboard. Many swallowed their own tongues. Many were tossed out. There were countless uprisings and mutinies above these aboard slave ships, right? So just to say that we resisted this thing from day one and continue to resist and we will continue to do that work. One of the things is often that you hear a lot, is like people singing Amazing Grace everywhere. And, a little tidbit about that the origins of that song, John Newton, he was a slave ship owner, master, whatever you want to call him, above the slave ship Greyhound. He was feeling a certain kind of way, the conflict between his Christianity and trafficking and human trafficking. He was feeling conflict. And he's hearing the hymns, the cries from the people, below deck. And he used those hymns to write this, to inspire, and then to write this song, Amazing Grace. I once was lost, but now I'm found, oh, my poor wretched soul. Those things that you hear time and time again, every time you hear Amazing Grace. So, note that for your books, though. But yeah, so we're talking ultimately here about the Ma'afa. It's a Kiswahili word meaning African Holocaust. So we talk about the transatlantic slave trade, the peculiar institution of slavery, the Middle Passage, even when we're talking about Jim Crow, legal segregation, 100 years of lynching, police brutality. We're talking about the Ma'afa, the African Holocaust here. Oh, wait, I'm not talking fast. You're just listening slow. So, yeah. So during slavery, you'll have many families was ripped apart. Enslaved people were not allowed to marry. It was illegal for folks to get married. When children were born, oftentimes women would have these babies and they got to get back out in the field, or they breastfeed, and but they still had to bring in the same amount of bales of cotton. They still had the same amount of tasks to complete. It made no difference whether they had a newborn or not. And I mean, and that's just one of the tragedies. So often on some of the larger plantations, there was there'd be a woman there. She was just designated to take care of the children, feed the children, the whole nine. So you start to see that families became like blended and contorted and like ripped apart. And oftentimes families were separated when the slave owners died, and so the inheritance was split up amongst their children, and their children would move and they would take their enslaved Africans with them elsewhere. So that's like tearing families apart. One of the things that happens too is that did happen. We I don't know if you ever talked or heard about the auction blocks. When they took Africans from these ships or whatever, and they like expecting their bodies and their strength and all that kind of stuff and whatever, and they was selling Africans, from one plantation to another. So sometimes on some plantations where Africans, our ancestors, was like troublemakers and stuff like this, they were sold off. So and being sold to another plantation mean you was like being taken away from your family. And in some cases, some people were able to go and visit their relatives on, like, I think Saturdays or one night out the week. Definitely on Christmas, that was a day that off to spend with family. So we take advantage of these holidays, these times out to reconnect with our loved ones. So when slavery ended, I mean, that was just this great push to reconnect, to find the people that you've been lost, to find the people that have been sold away, to find the children that you never got to couple, and things. And so people went through great lengths, like looking for their family members all over the South and wherever they may have been. Going so far as like posting ads in newspapers. Many reached out to the Freedmen's Bureau for government assistance in helping finding relatives as well too. So and that kind of like gets into the essence of what Juneteenth is when we think about family reunions and why we are like find ourselves like each year having around Juneteenth is this big family celebration, because like, hey, we free people now. Let's get together and enjoy and love one another, right? So, and this all happens, in 1865. So some of the first Juneteenth celebrations were prayer services and political rallies in which it took the opportunity to teach about voting rights. Juneteenth is also known as Jubilee Day, Emancipation Day, Freedom Day, and Black Independence Day. Just so you know that, because I remember when I was like 14, 15, I'm like 46 years old now, but I was like reading and studying, I would see like Jubilee in the history books and stuff, but didn't necessarily equate that to Juneteenth, right? So it's because there's just other names out there. Many writers, authors, writers, historians over the years have talked about Juneteenth in various ways, and many communities celebrate it. So you might go somewhere and they're going to call it Freedom Day or Black Independence Day or Juneteenth, as it's now nationally recognized. But wait, emancipation? Yeah, so emancipation, message. Got another message here for you. Like I said, we got commercials in here. And don't forget, we're going to have a test after this, so I hope you all are taking good notes. 2 years later. Yes, 2 years later. Now, once again, like I said, I'm 46, originally from Houston, Texas, and growing up each year when we had family discussions around Juneteenth, there was always, one elder, the uncle, be like, yeah, but it was 2 years later before they let us know. And it was. For almost like 250,000 black folks, Africans living in Texas, did not know, or if they did know, they weren't even allowed to to know, if that makes any sense to you, that slavery was over. We know it wasn't totally blind to the fact, or didn't hear by word of mouth. 2 years, I'm sure it traveled, but they were still, like, as far as the plantation owners, the slave owners there, were not like relinquishing this power. They want to keep this old ways, they lost the war, so they just basically salty, and they just gonna like get all they can out of the people while they could, and they did that for 2 years. So when Gordon Granger arrives in Galveston and issues General Order Number 3 to let the people know that, based on the proclamation, the Emancipation Proclamation, which was 2 years prior, that all slaves were free. So there was just a big celebration, like woo woo, finally we're free. So whether, however you see that, this 2 year, gap, it still became a time of celebration when it did happen, and it just like spread like wildfire. One of the things I often heard too is that it wasn't even, the general order was issued on June 19th. But because it was like word of mouth and things passed from plantation, communities, it's like many, I remember hearing my elders say, well, Juneteenth was like, because they know it was around that time that word started to spread, like that second week in June, or third week in June. That's Juneteenth, June 19th. Yeah, so let's talk about the Juneteenth flag for a minute. This is some good stuff too. Juneteenth celebrations. You see the flag waving there like holly. It was initially created in 1997, and it was like revised in 2000. In 2007, they added 65. So of course, you see the red, white, and blue, and how that translates to the U.S. flag, the United States flag. But it's also to let people know that the red, white, and blue that formerly enslaved peoples and their descendants are free Americans as well. So the arc in the flag symbolizes a new horizon, meaning fresh opportunities and promising futures for Black Americans. The star stands for freedom for everyone, for every Black American in all 50 states, and it's also a nod to Texas, which is also known as the Lone Star State. So it's a nod to Texas because that's where Juneteenth started the celebration. And in the burst surrounding the star is meant to reflect a nova, a new star, which represents a new beginning. And, I love stars. I'm a superstar. It's like bursting with explosions and new beginnings and new things to look forward to. So it gives us hope. It lets the flag lets us know where we've been, where we at, and where we're going. The future is perfect, right? Yep. We got Juneteenth in Alaska. And as I was saying earlier, I graduated high school here in 94. And I remember in 95, my friend of mine and I, Kokai Nosakari, we wrote this book called Free African Minds. And we went to Kinko's, printed it up and everything. And so we was out there at the Juneteenth on the park strip, selling our little books for like $5 or something like that we was doing. So, but it was cool, first book that I ever wrote. Well, anyways, so there, at the Juneteenth celebration, talking to many people in the community and some of the elders, like, yeah, we've been having Juneteenth quite some time up here in Alaska, And as I was preparing for this presentation, I was like, well, I know at least 1995, but maybe there's something much further back than that. So I reached out to an elder friend of mine. That was like Cal Williams is like like the local like historian. So much about the history of African Americans in Anchorage and in Alaska that I often go to him along with other elders in the community like Ed Wesley. I can go and talk to them, and they got all kinds of things. Articles, clippings, newspaper clippings, stories, narratives, their own personal journeys of being here, and. Yeah, oh gosh, I didn't think to tell you, how Africans got here to Alaska. Because, like, one, it's like they got Juneteenth, but they got Black people. Yeah, it goes so far back as Matthew Henson and the the location of the geographic North Pole, right? In that expedition. And so Matthew Henson here, and that was what 1890s or something like that that went down. And Matthew Henson, that was Michael Healy, it was an explorer. But we really start to see the influx of black people into Alaska when military started coming up here. Many of the Buffalo Soldiers was up here in the 1890s. They also helped build the Alaskan Highway. So as once Alaska became a state in 1853, more African Americans was coming up here through the military. But many came up here also, in search of gold, the Klondike Rush, for other opportunities and stuff, and was able to, to embed themselves into their communities and business, and entertainment, and all sorts of ways. And speaking of which, is interesting to know that what I found out the other day is that the first that we know of so far, Juneteenth celebration, took place at the Crazy Horse Saloon here in 1983, right? So like I said, it's like, I don't know, that's like 30 years ago or something like that, almost. No, that's more. Goodness gracious. I have a degree in creative writing, not mathematics, so please forgive me. But nevertheless, you get the gist of what I'm saying. Initially there was Juneteenth celebrations taking place in 1983 to 85. And then I was, digging more and more because earlier this week, Jasmine Smith, who's been organizing the Juneteenth celebration since like 2017 that I know of for sure, downtown on the park slip, they received a resolution from the Anchorage municipality earlier this week. Come to find out here that as early as 1998, the Anchorage municipality has been recognizing Juneteenth. So I mean that's good, right? To have that validation, that outside validation, though we don't need it because we validate ourselves. That's what Malcolm talked about, self-determination. If we determine who we are, we don't need anybody else to recognize our holidays and everything. But it's nice if they do. And so it's nice to know that the city of Anchorage has been, somewhat like, supportive of Juneteenth celebrations since 1998. Yeah. And so it's just a good time, right? And since 2016-17, I've been going to the Juneteenth celebration each year. If it was at the park strip, one time it was at Lions Park in Fairview. Then it was like a Northway Mall in the parking lot, and it just kind of move around. But this year, it's going to be back on the park strip. So speaking of which, if you want to check out Juneteenth this year and learn more about the history and culture, be around some other black folks, reconnect, right? And and for black folks in Alaska, we're from all over the places, and we have these blended families, and we made our homes, we made our communities with one another. But the last 3 years in dealing with the pandemic, we haven't been able to kick it like we normally do. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of people I'm looking forward to that I hadn't seen since like 2019. Looking forward to that because Juneteenth is this time for reunion. And it's the time to get down on some fried chicken, some cornbread, some collard greens, red velvet cake, cookies, the whole thing. But you gotta have your red soda. Why, I don't know, but and just digging up and preparing for this, it's like so many narratives always talked about Juneteenth celebration since like 1866, and red soda was involved. What's that about? I don't know, but it's good. I just want to thank you, for having the patience to sit down, and hear me chop it up and talk about Juneteenth. Oh my gosh, this is my last commercial here, class commercial break. I put these in because I just don't want to beat people over here with just slides after slides, this death by PowerPoint type of thing. But nevertheless, it's an opportunity, to talk about the commercialization, to talk about how often that our bodies and our cultures are like exploited for profit and for gain. And here the poor mind saw lady, you know, I was all kinds of upset. She went from like this wholesome lady to just like, ooh, I'm so sexy. Right? Ain't nothing wrong with that, but you know, it's just like, what was it, like a few weeks ago? Um, Walmart, like, you know, they put out some ice cream, some Juneteenth ice cream, and like, who's gonna sell it? But there's backlash, you know, pushback from the people. Like, you know, how you just gonna try to, you know, just like exploit us, you know, just exploit our holiday and capitalize off of it? So they pulled it off the shelf, so you don't have to worry about going and purchase your Juneteenth ice cream. You know, you can have some regular ice cream, but more important, red Kool-Aid, right? Oh yeah, yeah. So the other question is, you know, it's like Wakanda real? Yes, Wakanda is real. And how do we know Wakanda is real? Because it's on the map, of course. And then if you go to the airport there in Atlanta, you go to the Terminal 3, and there you are. You can get a flight to Wakanda. One is leaving at 7:30 p.m., you know, and you'd be off on your way. And just so you know, yes, Wakanda is real. It is right next door to Zamunda. So don't ever forget that Zamunda is a real place too, you know, because that's where, you know, Prince Hakeem is from, you know. And so yeah, so you, if you don't know the reference, whatever, you need to go check out Coming to America. And yes, Wakanda is a real place. So Wakanda forever. Ah, and I told you there's gonna be a test. Are you ready for this test? I hope you're all ready for this test. Sorry for the interruption of your regular scheduled program. This was only a test to see if you give a damn about transgressions in your news feed as you scroll down to perceive past atrocities against humanity. A blind eye so you may not see the pearls of a second-class citizen. When you still have analog for best vision, outdated, archaic, played-out education. New day, same funky situation. It's only a test to see if you give a damn. Now, back to your regular scheduled program. Yay! Yeah, so that's a little outro, and I want to thank you all. I want to thank the Perseverance Theater, you know, for helping making this happen and producing this lecture of mine. And I hope it was insightful to you, as well as, like, you know, entertaining, uplifting, inspiring, all those great, wonderful words that we like to use to describe a good time. So yes, happy Juneteenth, everyone. Yeah, keep it real, keep it true and real. All right, MC MoHagani Magnetek, your girl, your one and only hostess doing the mostest. I'm out. Peace.